Michael was searching for a place to stay in New York as he was offered a new job in Brooklyn. He was feeling disheartened as the more places he searched, the more he felt he couldn't afford anywhere as there was no place that met his budget. But suddenly, when he was just about to give up, something caught his eye. He had to read it twice to make sure he wasn't imagining it. There was an apartment in a building in Brooklyn, just a few blocks from where he was starting his job. He couldn't believe his luck, so he emailed the company right away, and a week later he moved in and was lying down on his bed smiling at the fact he had a place of his own in Brooklyn and was about to start a new job. He began to read a book and relax as he was starting work in a week. He was feeling tired and was about to go to sleep, so he laid the book down beside him on the bed. Then he suddenly got a start when something like a shadow moved on the wall in front of him. He looked around expecting to see someone that made the shadow, but no one was there. No one was in the room. The shadows began moving around the room. He couldn't make any sense of them. Michael found it very hard to go to sleep that night, but eventually he slipped into a deep sleep. The next night, the same thing happened. The next day he was walking down the street and past a street basketball court. He knew that the guys playing were looking at him strangely, so he asked, could he help them? One guy said to Michael, "You're that guy who moved into room 456 in the building right up the block, right?" Michael was surprised these strangers knew and replied, "Yes, how do you know that? And why do you ask?" The boy said, "Man, did you hear anything about that place? There's weird stuff happens there, that's all I'm saying." Michael was thinking about the boy's words, and instead of carrying on for his walk around the blocks like he usually did since he arrived in Brooklyn, he walked right back to his apartment. He opened his laptop and searched his address. He froze in horror when he saw a photo of a little boy and a man and woman on the screen. He guessed they were his parents. As he read on, he learned that the little boy was out playing one day when a Necronomicon book from H.P. Lovecraft was thrown out the window from stories above and hit the boy on the head. The boy suffered memory loss and trauma and was put into foster care, and his parents were found in the apartment with their bodies mutilated. There was no evidence of anyone in the apartment, and no conclusion as to what really happened to the boy's parents. Michael heard of H.P. Lovecraft before and knew about his famous monster, Cthulhu. Then suddenly shivers ran up his spine as he thought of the shadows going up and down the wall many times since he arrived in the apartment. They reminded him of what Cthulhu looks like that he saw down through the years. He remembered when he was a kid reading comics, and the character was in loads of the pages in different forms of horror. Then suddenly Michael heard a noise, and he screamed when he saw a weird-looking monster in front of him, which even though he couldn't believe his eyes, knew that it had to be Cthulhu. He screamed as the monster rushed for him, and as he backed back more and more, Michael fell through the glass out the window and fell on the ground and was killed instantly. As he was falling to his death, his memory came back, It was always Kalulu who was making sure of Michael's fate. Michael got his job in Brooklyn and found the apartment and was drawn here by the spirit of Kalulu, who hadn't finished him years ago. The curse only had power in the apartment. Just before he hit the ground, he had remembered he was that little boy in the photograph so many years ago that got knocked unconscious by the Necronomicon being thrown from his apartment. Now the job is done, and now Michael is gone. Megan was looking through her laptop for some place to live in New York. She knew that it would be very expensive, but she had to move for her new job. She was surprised, shocked and delighted when she saw that there seemed to be an apartment for rent very near where she was going to work. There were no photos of it, but she had to take a look, so that's exactly what she did. When she arrived at the apartment, there was a man opened the door and said to her, "Hello, you must be Megan. My name is Andrew. Well, welcome to the apartment. You can have this for $4,500 a month." She couldn't believe what he just said, so she asked him did he mean $4,500, and he said yes. When she looked inside the apartment, she couldn't believe the size of it for being in central New York and so reasonable. Megan was a pickpocket by choice. She didn't need the money, but she loved the thrill of it. She knew there were people who were kleptomaniacs, but she didn't consider herself one. She preferred to look at it as a cheap thrill. She was down the road from her apartment in a really nice clothes shop and stole a beautiful dress for $1,300. She was buzzing walking down the street, but by the time she got back to her apartment, the buzz was gone. After a few weeks, Megan got to know Andrew. She went to his apartment, which was just across from hers, and they were drinking wine. She noticed that she saw all his apartment, every room bar one, and when she asked about it, Andrew told her that it was his mom who was sick and he was looking after her, and he preferred her not to be disturbed. One night, Megan walked into Andrew's apartment and the TV was on. He was asleep on the sofa, and there was this weird horror on the TV with a girl hanging from a ceiling. She coughed a little to wake Andrew. Andrew woke up with a start and put the TV off and said, "Sorry, I was just watching some horror." Megan moved closer and went to kiss him and sneaked the keys from his pocket. She was really determined to see what was in that room. She said to Andrew, "Hey, I'm exhausted, could I just chill out here? But if you could grab a really nice bottle of wine I have in my fridge, I would really appreciate it so much." When Andrew left for her apartment, she quickly tried all the keys until she got the right one and opened the door. She didn't want to wake his mom, but she had to have a look as it all seemed very strange. She froze in horror when what she saw was a woman hanging from a wall. It looked familiar when it finally hit her that it wasn't a horror movie on Andrew's TV. He was watching a live feed of what was happening in this room, and he had a girl tied up, hanging from the ceiling with blades on the floor underneath. She heard a noise and turned around to see Andrew holding a knife, and he said, "Don't you know it's very bad to snoop around behind people's backs?" Then Andrew stabbed Megan until she bled to death. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content. Sam was very disappointed one night when he was out for a walk and happened to come across a restaurant and was stunned to see his girlfriend Judy in there talking to another man. He thought of movies with scenes like this and wondered, was it something innocent, meeting like a platonic relationship and meeting up about work? But his hopes were dashed when she moved towards the man and kissed him on his lips. They weren't in each other's houses yet, not even up towards the door. Sam knew what he would do. He had done it before and got away with it, so there was nothing from stopping him from doing it now. The next day he met her, he made a date for her that night in a local bar. He was talking to her like there was nothing happened, like she was some honest person who would never cheat. But of course he knew himself the opposite was the truth. They were speaking in the bar, and to any outsider, they would have thought they were both enjoying each other's company. Sam was in an upbeat mood, but little did Judy know it wasn't because of her being in her company. It was because of what he had planned to do with her. They both walked home, and it was getting dusk. Sam thought Judy had money because her house was huge, but money wasn't important to him, and anyway, he wasn't even in the house. They weren't even next to each other's door, just back a few yards, as if they were hiding some secret affair. But important to him was truth, honesty, and loyalty more than any money. That was the most important thing Sam could have in any relationship. He kissed her goodnight and walked on. 10 minutes later, he walked past her house and took out his very clever contraption he hid in a bush just down from her house. It was a gasoline can he would throw in her window and torch the house, and when it was ablaze, he would make sure it would go up fast, because beforehand he would have doused the walls as much as he could with gasoline. He wasn't familiar with this neighbourhood and wouldn't even set foot in it only for Judy. He would have loved to have stood there watching the fire, but he knew he had to wait till the fire engine got there and join a crowd of onlookers and to act like a shocked member of the public. 10 minutes later, the crowd gathered and the fire engine, but he froze in shock when he saw Judy without a scratch speaking to a man. He then heard a person next to him say to another person, "That must have been a gang hit. That is the house of the biggest gang boss in town. There will be a war break out over this." Sam had just wondered, could it be that Judy was just pretending it was her house to impress him? He found out very soon she lived down the road in a very small house, and realized that sooner or later he will have the town, if not state's biggest gang, after him for the arson attack. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content.